Mining faces a new wave of complexity, from copper shortages driven by AI data centers to the nuclear comeback lifting uranium demand. Staying ahead now means making faster, smarter subsurface decisions. And that's where Seequent comes in, building integrated geoscience and geoengineering platforms that connect people, data, and decisions. Well, joining us is Dr. Janina Elliott, Segment Director for Mining at Seequent, as we unpack how digital tools are reshaping the future of mining. Yeah, Janina, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, look, mining companies are operating in a very interesting space these days, right? I mean, there's mounting geopolitical shifts, tighter regulation, and investor pressure. Just as a quick curtain raiser to start things off, how does Seequent help mining companies stay agile and adapt quickly?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. The times today are truly challenging. There's a lot of market volatility, and that raises both challenges across the mining chain. They're different for juniors versus the operators, but ultimately it all drives everyone within the mining chains to having to adapt to these environments. And so what Seequent does is provide a digital format and a digital way of interacting with this new environment to build resilience and to build agility overall. Now, generally, it's agreed upon that technological change is what helps operations and active juniors and explorers really to build resilience and to optimize their processes. And this is really where we come in, particularly through developments such as our active cloud platform, Evo, for example. That is an opportunity here is for companies within the mining chain to truly integrate the software stack that they have already to build existing or to build out existing workflows to be more seamless, to have data flow, and to optimize their processes in a digital space. And this is where we come in.
Yeah. And you talk about unlocking new value, right? That's central to what you do here through rapid reconfiguration of operations. What does that look like in practice at a mine site using Seequent's tech?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways it can be done, right? So again, rapid reconfiguration is what needs to be done, but that's not an easy thing to achieve because it's associated with a cultural change, for example, the way that that miners work, whether it's an operational space or the exploration space. So we can bring a lot of different technological options to the table, but it's truly about how do employees interact with the data that they're given and how well can they perform in this particular space with this new mindset around agility, to introducing real-time information into the day-to-day work. It's not about checking off lists anymore. It's about being active and proactive with the data that we receive on a daily basis. And that's a whole new way of working. And this is where we can help.
And it's interesting you mentioned that because so much of that involves shifting from this traditional workflow, right, towards this integrated system. What's the biggest operational change miners experience when they adopt tools like Leapfrog Geo or MX Deposit that you speak of?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways that the work needs to change. It's about being able to see into a number of different categories along the mining chain. So not just a specific geoscience focus that one geologist might have, but being able to look across different silos, for example, by being able to learn from each other and to understand contextual information suddenly flowing across the board. This is really where optimization comes in, by being able to look across and having data flow from one part to the next in order to have an iterative cycle of understanding and learning that derives from the technology employed. But it's about communicating, it's about collaborating in the right space. And this is what we're trying to open up to our customers.
I'd love to hear of a typical example where things have changed using the newer Evo platform, right? Because it promises integrative workflows. Can you give us an example of how it did simplify things, especially collaboration?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the aspects it takes care of is by reducing the amount of time that a geologist has to do or has to deal with manual labor, for example, right? This is something where a lot of geoscientists are really struggling. It's like with being the expert that they can be. It's like, so they're spending a lot of time with data wrangling. They're spending a lot of time with call handling, for example. Now with Evo, we've created a platform that has a number of cloud-enabled applications directly linked into the platform. So it allows for fast computation, it allows for data flow. Now, when I talk about labor-intensive pieces across the mining chain, starts, for example, in the core shed, right? So a geologist comes in and spends a ton of its time trying to handle the core, trying to handle the data generated from it, not even having the opportunity to truly tackle that complex geology that's laid out in front of them. So by reducing these types of labor-intensive aspects through, let's say, for example, a product that we created, it's called Imago, it's a possibility then to reduce that time spent through automated approaches, bringing the data in faster, and then collaborate afterwards in order to really untangle that complex geology. And when I say collaboration, it's about bringing that information quickly into aspects such as Leapfrog Geo, for example, where the 3D modeling can be done not just within a smaller team, but across different teams. So there are opportunities of sharing through products such as Central, for example, which are also cloud-enabled, that bring true transparency to the process. Overall, so starting in the core shed all the way to geological modeling and downstream to active operations, those particular processes need to be interlinked with each other. And that's exactly what Evo does in order to bring all the different geoscience teams together to be more agile in their approach.
Janina, I'm getting the sense as we wrap up here that really time is the currency for mining companies, right? And this is what it gives them, because it just limits and just sidebars so many things that one would ordinarily spend so much time on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 80%, sometimes even 90% of the time is dealt with data wrangling. And so particularly when it comes also to the analytical component. So we talked about the labor-intensive task, which makes sense to automate. It also reduces risks, of course, in that environment. But it also comes down to clever data analytics. This is where we want to support the geologists as well. So we've created, for example, an app in, again, the upstream part of the mining chain called Driver that really tackles geology from the get-go, from the drill hole, in order to understand structural constraints, for example, where your mineralization, where your targets really are, before even entering the 3D modeling space. Geologists are often quite hampered by existing deposit models, for example, by a lack of data, but also an overwhelming amount of information that's out there that needs to be streamlined. And so Driver is one of the apps that really helps with that, to have an idea around what happens in the terms of geological complexity before we go ahead and put models on it, put a specific constraint or framework around it. So really let the mathematics and the data speak for itself in order to define domains and structure to move on then into more optimized or a better framework for geological understanding and targeting thereafter.
A final question before I let you go. You know, often you would get mining companies paying lip service to digital transformation as they see it, right? But looking ahead to the next 12 to 18 months, what key signals should investors or mining partners watch out for in companies that are genuinely using subsurface intelligence?
Yeah, it's about how these individual companies share their information in a transparent fashion, right? How much insight they're providing and whether they do this through technological means. So by having for example, so the collaborative portfolio in place, such as Central, it allows not only for geoscience teams internally to share information across, but also externally. It's important to get stakeholders involved through intuitive means and through transparent and visual means in order to really bring information out there and start a dialogue. I think the mining industry is really in a place right now, it's like where they need to change the perception that we have in the communities, like how we work, that we really hit ESG targets, that we want to work with communities, and it has to be done through communication. And technology is one way of doing it, to invite everyone to the table and truly have an understanding of where we're headed and what we wish to achieve. This is where you build stakeholder confidence, right? And not just for our overall communities, but also investors, for example. So that's really important to do. Technology can help with that.
Yep, sounds compelling indeed. Well, thanks very much indeed, Dr. Janina Elliott, Segment Director for Mining at Seequent. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me today.